Hi everyone. I'm Akarsh. I'm a principal with the investment team at Elevation Capital, and we have today Sarthak Jain with us, who is the co-founder and CEO of NanoNets. We partnered with NanoNets and Sarthak last year, sometime in June, in their Series A round. But we have been observing the NanoNets journey from the very early days, and it has been a fabulous story of resilience, innovation, and iterations. Before I hand over to Sarthak, quickly about NanoNets. So, NanoNets is a no code, AI driven automation platform giving businesses smarter ways to run document based operations such as capturing data, storing and routing documents associated with spend management, procurement processes, loyalty reward programs, and more. What excited us about NanoNets was the fact that the product was cutting edge, but still so easy to use based on the innovations the team had done and how Sarthak and Pratmesh, with very little capital, had figured out a scalable PMF. Without much further ado, I would like to welcome Sarthak, co-founder and CEO of NanoNets and a very good friend. And Sarthak, I know you are very media shy, but I'm super excited to be here.
Hey Akash, thanks for the kind introduction. Really excited to be here. It's been a fun journey building NanoNets, partnering with Elevation, and trying to solve our customers' problems.
Great. Likewise, Sarthak, and it's been truly a pleasure for us to watch you from the sidelines and cheering you all the way along. Um, why don't we start from the beginning, Sarthak? Right from the days of your first startup and how all of that led to NanoNets. Also, this is not the first avatar you started with, right? I mean, the idea of NanoNets itself has undergone quite a few changes. Would love to hear about that.
Right. So I met my co-founder Prathamesh during our undergraduate, uh, where both of us started our first company, Qubit. That company was subsequently acquired by Mintra, and then we went on to start NanoNets. Um, Both of us have been working in the area of machine learning for about 10 years since our undergraduate days. And one of the learnings that we've had through that process and journey is that it's very easy to build machine learning prototypes and machine learning demos and create machine learning within AI research labs. But it's very difficult for software teams to be able to integrate these cutting edge technologies into production environments. Um, and we saw this consistently across all the places we worked, including our own startup. So the problem that we really set out to solve was how do we take cutting edge machine learning and make it accessible to any software team. And we decided to go down the same approach as how identity today is a solved problem, or sending an SMS is a solved problem, which is essentially an API first approach to solving this problem, where software teams no longer have to worry about the complexity or the intricacies of the machine learning algorithm, and can sort of just make an API call to get a prediction or train a model. And that's the problem that we sort of set out to solve. Um, in doing so, we realized that the single biggest request that we used to get from our customers, where we wanted to automate processes in machine learning, was can you help us with our document or manual workflows, which were essentially bringing the physical world into the digital. And we've sort of doubled down on that, and that's the value prop that we provide to our customers today.
Got it. Got it. That was super helpful, Sarthak. And in this journey, what were the key aha moments? And these can be, before you sort of pivoted to this recent avatar of NanoNets, this can be after. Also, I mean, a big question in this, in the document extraction thesis, I think was just a competition, right? I mean, you need to get an idea, that if this is a problem worth solving. There were sort of competitors and legacy players like Abby Kofax, and then open source tools like Amazon Extract. There is Google Docs API. So there were a few macro bets that you were taking on the technology, on the market, and at the same time, sort of assessing the existing solutions and saying, there are gaps here. So while the market has some players, there is a very clear niche or a very clear problem that we can solve. So would love to hear a bit about both.
Sure. So in terms of aha moments, I wouldn't say it's really been one thing, but we have some key deep understandings. But we've sort of taken a very marketing first approach to building product, where we started off by identifying a key user persona, starting to produce content for that persona, which was people looking to tinker with AI based solutions or looking to find out what's the cutting edge. we produced a lot of content and we started publishing about what is the cutting edge for AI in finance or any other industry. And when we had users come in, look at this and look at our platform, we kept getting user requests. I need to be able to solve X process or Y process, and that is what sort of gave us insight into what to build for our customers. Um, and that's sort of the bet that we're taking, which is these small components or small software tools that are built to solve business processes get replaced by AI, and you have a very AI first approach to solving these problems. And that's the sort of big aha moment, but it's a lot of small iterations that we get feedback from customers, and we build and iterate. The really big bet for us is that today, if you want to solve a small business process, you get a software engineer to write some script or write some tool, or there are even no code tools, but you still need to write some custom logic as to what needs to happen. We believe an AI first approach to solving that looks like you just show it 10 examples of the business process that you're looking to run, and then the AI automatically learns how to solve that process. Just to give you an example, let's say, in the process of doing this podcast, you are looking for a reimbursement for some software you purchased. You submit that as a reimbursement request to your company. That gets routed to some finance department, then to your manager for approval, and then eventually you get paid into your bank account. That's a month-long process. We've sort of short circuited that by saying, can I learn from the last 100 reimbursement requests that have happened and automate this process without anybody having to write any software or any no code based rules? And that's the big aha for us, that we've seen this working and we've sort of seen this process play out. The legacy providers that you sort of spoke about provide piecemeal solutions to this, where you have to glue multiple things together to be able to solve this process end to end. And we're saying that, if you have a smart enough AI intelligent bot, it should be able to learn this process end to end. That's the big bet for us.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And I think sort of a good segue into the problems specific to SaaS with this example. So this is one learning I've had. I mean, your customer profile, your GTM, and your product in a SaaS business are all closely linked. Now, as you spoke about these problems, right, and as you spoke about these legacy providers, these problems have existed for a while, and second, these legacy providers are solving these problems in some way, right? So what I wanted to understand was that, how did you identify your ICP, right? And then you have sort of done a phenomenal job of building a strong inbound GTM, um, which gets the customers for whom our product works very well. So how did you zero in on this matrix, right? This is the ICP which is facing this problem, and this is the product which will solve this problem. And then this is how the GTM would work. Because if one of these pieces don't match, then it's back to the drawing board again. So any early anecdotes on the experiments just will help our listeners a lot.
Sure. And I'd love to say that, we had some genius insight, that we knew from day one that this is going to be our ICP and just this is the problem we're going to solve. But it's sort of been a lot of learning. And the way we've done it is, we sort of love AI, we love tinkering with new solutions. So we produced content for people like us who started consuming this content and who are fascinated by some of the same things. And then we started listening to them and talking to them and understanding what their problems are, and what are the things that you can actually solve in today's world using real world AI that can solve these problems. So it's mostly just about listening and talking to users as opposed to having a very deep insight that we began with. The only thing I will say is we understood that this is the user persona that we want to go after, and the big challenge for most companies is, so let's say the canonical advice is to go talk to your users. It assumes two things: that one, who your users are, and two, you know how to be able to talk to them. You can have some broad level of understanding of who your user is. Then the second part is figuring out how to talk to them. So a really easy way is, find users similar to you, and second is produce content that you would find interesting yourself. That sort of ends up solving both problems. You get users, and then it's very easy to talk to them. And from there, you can sort of ask them what their pain points are, and then try to sort of narrow in on what's feasible, what's a real problem. Are these painkillers, or are these vitamins, and all of that kind of approach. But saying that this is the product and this is the problem I'm solving, in some ways it makes it sound too easy. I think identifying the users is probably the easier thing to do.
Got it. Got it. And just sort of a follow on to that. So, the users that you decided ultimately on, how long did it take you, to say that okay, this is my user persona that I would go after?
Um, I think that's been a work in progress, and maybe I'd say even initially maybe 6 to 12 months is the journey that it took us from starting to do that to saying that okay, now we have something repeatable. Because you will always find people willing to talk to you and willing to tell you their problems. The challenge is finding repeatability in those problems and figuring out if there's a business model that you can solve. So I'll give you one example, which is we initially produced content that was very interesting to drone enthusiasts, where people wanted to build solutions based on drones in identifying objects. And what we realized, okay, maybe a lot of these people are telling us that there is a problem, but it was close to impossible to be able to monetize that problem just because of the nature of the industry. So you may have some misses there. You may even identify an ICP, but that may be a complete miss because there's no business to be built there.
Got it. And this, I'm assuming, was the 0 to 1 million ARR kind of a journey, right? And so, any more insights there would help. Also, would love to understand how the journey beyond 1 million in ARR has been for you. Because I hear again in SaaS that every in the initial days, every million in ARR, and then over time, every 5 to 10 million in ARR is a different sort of a journey, different persona, different GTM, different channels, and so on, right? So, and maybe different products even. So would love to borrow some learnings from there as well, Sarthak.
Sure. So it's been interesting for us where we've done the 0 to 1 million journey twice now, where we first went from a zero to over $1 million, went back to zero, and then went from zero to one again. And this is unfortunate that you can have false starts where you could be doing north of $1 million in revenue and still may not have PMF. Where you and the challenge becomes, and that's sort of the problem with the 0 to 1 journey, which is you don't try to do things efficiently. You find customers, you solve their problems, they pay you money. And this is the problem in B2B, where you could do this and you're not worried too much about is this efficient, or is this, am I doing things efficiently. And then when you try to scale that million beyond, you may realize that, oh, this is terribly inefficient, I can't really make any money doing this. And you may have to start from scratch. And that's sort of the difference between the 0 to 1 and the million to 10 million journey, which is in 0 to 1 you can do anything and everything to make customers happy, and from a million to 10 you're just basically looking at optimizing things and sort of getting better at doing things. You can't be involved in every decision yourself. You have to delegate, you have to hire a team. So it's that optimization that happens from 1 to 10, and optimization at scale probably that happens from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, etc.
But then the other question that then here is, the just the feedback loop, right? Given all of these are different journeys, and like let's say, I mean, consumer business is not easy, but in a consumer sort of a company, a consumer tech company, you are doing some marketing, you're getting customers, you are sort of the feedback cycles are slower, right? And in this case, in SaaS, the feedback cycles are very long, at times quarters, 2 quarters, and so on, right? So you don't get as many shots at the goal even to define your playbook. So what would be your advice to a lot of these early stage founders, right? How do they measure PMF? How do they measure channel market fit or product channel fit? What are the good signals to look for? What signals to avoid? Basically, and maybe there is no recipe, but how should one think about this initial journey wherein you are still trying to measure PMF, identify the right product, and so on?
Sure. So I'll take that in two parts. I think the first one is the comparison of B2B and B2C and why it's much lower. And then the second part of seeing, if it's a false start or real. So on the first question, there is one very key reason why B2B and B2C are very different, where, B2C, there is a yes, no buying decision, or a yes, no app install, or yes, no, I want to buy a phone for e-commerce. And it's very simple, straightforward. It might happen in 30 minutes, sometimes longer, but not too long. The problem with a B2B business is it's never a yes or a no. It's always a maybe. And it's always like, yeah, this is great, but I may need XYZ to really solve my problem. And you sort of always have to take that with a pinch of salt. Plus, it's never one person making a decision. Yes, you are selling to a business, but a business is not really a decision making entity. The decision making entity is always individuals within the business. So you end up having to sell to five different people, or getting five different yeses before you actually make a sale. So the cycles are much longer because it takes 2 to 3 months to even figure out if what you've built is something that somebody's willing to pay money for, as opposed to in consumer, where you will get an instant response to whatever you've put out there. Now, having said that, the good thing about B2B is that because it's always a maybe, you've never lost a customer, and you can always build the incremental thing or build the additional feature to be able to get that person to say yes. And which then brings me to the other part of the question, which is, how do you sort of figure out if this person is really buying your product, or are they just getting you to build product for them, which is a real problem in the 0 to 1 journey. And you sort of have to almost say no to everything until you get five people saying the same thing, which is, yes, this is on my product roadmap, but you have to buy the product right now, give me a yes no, not a maybe. And every single thing that is not a yes is a no. And you can build the feature out and get back to the customer and maybe convert them at a later date, but trying to build solutions for customers is probably the thing that will sort of get you into the spiral loop of being stuck there and not building something repeatable. But then if five people tell you the same thing, then you go out and build it. So having great tracking of, okay, these are the feature requests, these are the things that I need to build to be able to get the next set of customers, is useful. And the trap you can fall into is not saying no to customers because you get so few of them. And that's the part of the inefficiency where you don't really care about saying getting 100 people to sign up. You care about getting one person to sign up and doing that repeatably to get to 100 happy customers. And that would sort of be, you can say that's PMF. But if you're just building custom solutions for all the people you sort of end up talking to, that will get you into that death spiral.
Got it. And now switching to the customer side, right? But sort of borrowing from this answer as well, Sarthak. So, one, do you remember landing your first customer, right? And how one. So how did that happen, and how did you feel after that? Also, from the earlier question as well, right? So, how do you decide when to say no, essentially, right? In those early days, you are in that discovery journey. You have no idea of the product, or limited idea of the product you were trying to build, right? So how do you again know what parts to say no to, right, and what parts to say yes to, right? It's a and maybe some examples in your cases would help you help our listeners.
Sure. So great question again on how do you say no to. I'll sort of talk about a framework and maybe then give an example later from our first customer. So the framework I'd use to say no is actually never saying no, but just saying that it's in our backlog, and then just keeping a backlog of everything that people have requested for, and just keep a tally. And you pick the one that is the most requested feature. So you're really not saying no to anything. You're just saying I'll do it at a later date, but you want to buy the product today or not. And whenever that feature is live, go back to the customer. And I sort of think that's the simplest way of solving it, as opposed to saying no to customers all the time. um, Having said that, when do you really just say, okay, I'll build it tomorrow for you? Because there will be cases where you, because you're a fast number team, you only have one or two customers, you just say yes and build the feature right then and there. I think that is sort of a gut call, where if it aligns with product vision you have, and you should have some sense of product vision at least in the short term. So if it aligns very clearly with your product vision, you should go ahead and do it. But don't stick to your product vision for too long, where not everybody is Steve Jobs, and not everybody has that level of consumer insight where they can be like, yeah, this is exactly what I'm going to build. You might have some inclination and some insight, but don't stick to it too deeply, where what customers want is at the end of it the right thing, not what you want to build.
And
Landing our first customer. Sorry,
and you
please.
and you did a bit of it yourself, right? I mean, there was this earlier product which was on the image recognition side, I think, and then you pivoted to this document extraction side. Same, probably the same underlying tech, but different products, different personas. So you have done it yourself as well, right?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll sort of walk you through that journey as well. And our first customer, I remember quite vividly, was this South African company who wanted to monitor a construction site using a drone. And we didn't have technology to be able to do that. And we sort of built it in a week. to be able to get that customer. And I remember we used to charge them $99 a month for doing this. And at that time, it felt like a big win. And we built a lot of custom solutioning for them. And then we got some repeat customers. We got a customer testimonial. We got some repeat customers doing the same thing, and super happy and excited about this. Some of our larger customers we got because maybe investor made an introduction to somebody, and we had asked for intro to a specific company, and we got it, and we were doing content moderation in those cases. Now there were slightly divergent use cases, but the what we felt was the underlying technology was common, the platform was common, we were building a product. The place where it sort of went wrong was in the GTM, where all of them required slightly different GTM motions. And what some people fail to miss is, yes, you can have the same product, but if you have different GTM motions, then it's not really the same product. The the go to market motion essentially ties into your product. And if you don't have the same mechanism of acquiring customers, then those are different product lines. And as a startup, you can't have different product lines. You have to have one product line that gives you majority of your revenue, and that is what scales. If you have multiple different go-to-market channels, you're going to have a lot of start stops, and that was the biggest problem that was plaguing us. And there was a heavy services component where the problems across customers didn't end up looking the same, and they couldn't still utilize it entirely on their own. When we moved to this or actually customers kept coming and telling us we want this document data extraction solution, and it was essentially the same thing over and over again, and it looked like the exact same product, the exact same go to market. Which is why we sort of decided that let's pivot, and it was a very hard decision, where I think, if I'm not wrong, we were at like maybe $1.5 million in ARR, and we sort of went back to zero and then started from there. So tough call, but you have to look at the patterns and see that, does this scale? Can I go from a million to 10 million quickly? And if you can't, then maybe some hard calls need to be taken. But I don't think there's any framework for it. It's sometimes gut.
Got it. And maybe a story of your toughest customer, right? Which was the toughest customer win for you? Um, and I'm assuming most of them would be today with you as well, right? So would love to understand the both how did you win those, and second, how the journey since winning has been.
Sure. The toughest customers are always enterprise customers, and you sort of enjoy winning them as well. But the big challenge becomes that there are 10 different stakeholders, and they each want a slightly different, uh, either you can say problem solved or a different product. If you each ask them to draw what the exact product looks like, they'll all say different things. And you need to find an intersection of all of those things, and sometimes they may be counter to what each of them is saying. Finding an intersection of that and pitching that as a product is probably the toughest. I remember landing our first Fortune 500 customer was probably one of the toughest. Sales cycles are much longer. Maybe it took 3 months for us to be able to land them. And you really end up enjoying that a lot because you never know up until the end, if this is going to happen. You always have a feeling that yes, it's going to sign today, it's going to sign today. And it's always a big win when you can get it done. But the biggest challenge there is navigating stakeholders, building something that multiple people can say yes to. And when that happens, you sort of realize the fact that okay, you're solving a real problem, because if 10 people can agree within an organization that yes, this solves a problem, then that's a big vote of confidence.
Got it. Got it. Sarthak, I think we spoke and in the intro spoke a bit about the various use cases NanoNet solves, but if we can spend some time on the key ones that we are solving today, right? And maybe two or three case studies where we have really made a deep impact, right, through these use cases in our customers. I think that will help.
Sure, absolutely. So, the primary value proposition that NanoNets offers to its customers are automating manual workflows. So, any workflow that you have today that is highly manual in nature, paper driven, we automate. So, some examples are accounts payable, reimbursements, onboarding vendors, those kinds of things are all automated using NanoNets. We can take a new document, it could be a PDF, image, scan document. We can take that, extract the relevant data, send it to the correct person for approval. We can apply automated approval rules, and then let's say it's an invoice, extract the vendor information, extract all of the correct routing, who needs to approve it, and then also get the vendor paid. So we integrate with your inbox or wherever the vendor is sending it, send it to the right platform if you're using Slack for approval, and then connect your bank to get the invoice paid. So marrying each of these different functions with the AI element and the workflow element and approvals is essentially what NanoNets does. Large part of our traction is in the financial services domain, where finance offices end up using us for automating a lot of their manual processes.
Got it. Got it. Maybe two, three, examples where you have sort of phenomenally changed the lives of your customers.
Sure. So there's this one customer which was really interesting to see. They're a company that manages rental units. They have maybe close to 100,000 rental units. They started with us when they were below 1,000, and they had one person looking at automating. So when you have these rental units, you need to process all of the work orders that come in to do the upkeep, and they generate a large volume of invoices. But as they've scaled from under 1,000 to a few 100,000, they've not added more than that 1%, and through that 1% they've managed to continue getting this operation running. So seeing their business scale is really exciting, and knowing the fact that we're adding value and helping their company grow, that's sort of really rewarding for us.
And our team, Sarthak, and again, I mean, very often, I give give the example of the team, right? So we went through tough times, and a large part of our team has stuck and grown with us even during that time, right? So uh, any learnings on the on how you build such a strong affinity within the team? What did you look for while hiring these people? How have you built this culture? That philosophy, if you can elaborate upon, Sarthak.
Yeah, so I think we've gone through some really tough times where that the time I mentioned, we sort of pivoted, went from 1.5 million to zero ARR. We were also out of money at the same time, and COVID happened simultaneously. So it was like a triple whammy. But the good thing that happened to us is we had hired what I would call quote unquote startup people, where these were all people who were either founders previously, or employee number one or employee number two at a early stage startup. So they had seen this journey and they all sort of stuck through it. So we didn't have any sort of people churn through that journey, and everybody was sort of really excited at still doing this, even though there was no money and there was no revenue that was coming in either. So going through that journey, we knew that especially in early days of startup, if people have seen uncertainty and are not phased by it, that's the kind of people that you require. Scaling organizations may require different kinds of people, but early stages of startups, it's super useful to have people who seen that kind of uncertainty before and don't get phased by it. But we've sort of always focused on the kind of people we're hiring and seeing do they have first principles mindset of wanting to solve tough problems, not just in it because the startup is the cool thing to do. They are truly interested in the kind of problems we're solving, and making sure we do right by them and keep them motivated. That's been our philosophy.
Got it. Got it. That's super helpful. And um, I don't know if you referred to that, but the culture of transparency that you maintain internally, right? I think that was one thing. Again, when we were investing, we sort of were inspired by a lot, inspired and impressed by a lot, right? So I think that helps further, right? It just helps just inspires so much trust in the team, and feel like they belong to the company, and not just they're not just coming there to give their input.
Yeah, so absolutely. I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done in terms of transparency, where each of the people we have on our team, we treat as a founder of the company, where we try and give them as much information as is possible. There was to the point where every single email that came into the company and went out was sort of publicly accessible, including, let's say, if Elevation sent us a term sheet, that would hit the inboxes of every single person working at NanoNets. It's been tough to scale that because just of email volume, but we still continue to have that level of transparency wherever possible. The thing that it does is it sort of makes everybody aligned with what the company is doing. There is no misalignment in what's happening. There is no second guessing the fact that information is being withheld from me, and that does make people feel like they truly are part owners in the company as well.
Yeah. Sadak, moving on to the stuff you enjoy probably more, AI ML. Uh, I mean, the advancements have been just phenomenal, right? I started following those when I started spending time on SaaS, which is 2 3 years ago, right? But every few months and now maybe few weeks, right? There is something disruptive coming out of OpenAI, or the DALI release, that was DALI 2 release that was there, right? So what do you think, the implication of this is for nanonets and broader AI startups in general? And we are sort of hearing a lot of things around generative AI right now, right? And it's probably the new in thing. So would love to hear your view on both this broader trend and the implication of this innovation on nanonets.
Sure, absolutely. And AI innovation is just one thing I can sort of at least think about all day. Maybe I don't have enough to say about the topic, but at least reading and thinking about it, I can spend all day doing it. I've seen this now approximately for 14 years, and it always, I am blown away by the cool new demo always. The challenge always is how do you take the cool new demo, create a product out of it. Having said that, the thing that ends up happening is AI research moves at such a pace where whatever was the cool new thing 3 months back may be redundant 3 months later. And we've seen that with DALI as well. I mean, you mentioned that, but like Stable Diffusion, DALI, the business model was supposed to be that we'll sell you APIs, and we'll charge per API call. And Stable Diffusion came in with an open source version. Uh, I'm sure the folks at DALI wouldn't have thought that it's possible to create a open source version, and they would have said that's our moat. But within, I think it was a couple of months, Stable Diffusion was launched as a open source variant. Now, I think that keeps is going to keep happening. An anecdote is that about 10 years back, the work that I did as a machine learning researcher is like that work could be done by a computer in 1 minute, and my job has already been replaced. So uh, the first people to lose their jobs when AI research happens is the AI researchers themselves. And then it's interesting to see how it will pan out for others. But the 2 points: one is how AI business models evolve. I think that's an open question, where if everything is going to become open source, then do you really have a mode that you can create? And I think the answer is yes, which is if you can create vertical applications as well as software around the AI. So it's not really the AI algorithm that you end up selling, but it's the user experience and the software around the AI algorithm that becomes the mode. And then obviously distribution, where companies who have the best distribution will continue to win. But it may be faster cycles, where Adobe getting replaced by Figma, getting replaced by Canva. I'm not sure these are chronologically correct, but let's say the next one may replace the Figma in 2 years as opposed to 6 8 years. And that pace of innovation will keep up. So it's a chase for Figma to be able to keep up with the innovation.
Got it.
The second part is, sorry, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. I was just sort of going to the second part of the earlier question itself, right? So, how do you think of the evolution of nanonets in this, in relation to this innovation, right? And maybe how you think about the next spurt of growth then for nanonets, and if possible, maybe give us a quick sneak peek into the product roadmap.
Sure. So, one key part of what we do is it seems like we're replacing people's jobs. And that's something that gets called out all the time. But the thing we've seen consistently is we don't replace jobs, but we make people more productive. And that's a key theme of what we end up doing. So, the example that I took, where one person was handling 1,000 invoices, can now handle 100,000 invoices. That's essentially the roadmap that we see, and making people more productive, where let's say AI researchers itself using AI to replace their job so they can do 10 people's job. That is sort of the future of what we're envisioning, and how we see ourselves play out. The role in that is that as we're automating workflows, we feel that all workflows that are touching businesses sort of start getting automated, where mundane boring jobs are getting replaced. If I talk to anybody and ask them what's the two things you hate about your job, I consistently hear two responses, which is One is I hate my boss, and the second one is I hate the manual work that I have to do. I can't do anything about hating your boss, but I can sort of try and replace the boring, mundane work that you have to do. And that's sort of our goal with NanoNets, that how can we take everything that's menial, boring, redundant, repetitive, and try to automate that with machine learning. I don't think that problem goes away anytime soon. And I don't think just the nature of cutting edge AI is the thing that works, but sort of creating software tools that help integrate everything and make everything work seamlessly. That's the true future for us.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Sarthak. It has been a real pleasure to see you and Pratmesh build a cutting edge global company out of India. And all of us are super excited to see what lies ahead. Thanks again for spending this time.
Absolutely. Thank you for partnering with us and having continue to have faith in what we're doing. And it's been super exciting building this company together with Elevation. Looking forward to the next 10 years of building cutting edge solutions.